Hello guys, my name is Johan Torres and today I'm going to be talking about BASIC. So, what is BASIC? Well, the origin of BASIC, which is short for Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code, was developed in the mid-1960s by John Kemme and Thomas Kurt at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, USA. Now, why did they make BASIC? Well, unlike any other programming language, which was often complex or required a deep understanding of computer architecture, or for you to be knowledgeable within programming languages, BASIC was made for an ease of use for new people, people that wanted to get into programming and students. So, due to the ease of access and versatility, BASIC gained quick popularity within academic institutions and eventually found itself into commercial computers and to home computers. So, how was BASIC used? Well, BASIC was mostly used between 1970s and 1980s due to personal computers being the Altair, Apple II, or the Commodore 64, which usually already came with basic interpreters, meaning that as soon as you got your computer, you had immediate access into programming. So you could start learning programming, or if you had classes, you were already set to go. So BASIC became a really standard programming languages within schools since it was easy to do, it was very simple, and it encouraged people to experiment with coding languages and get into it. Up beyond education, BASIC was used in a lot of industries, like for business, for data processing, for scientific stimulation, but most notably for game development. So, how was game development made with BASIC? Well, BASIC played a pivotal role within early games of game development, basically like the very raw, very simple classic games that were either made by professionals or by amateurs. So, a lot of the games that were made with BASIC were usually text-based adventure games, meaning that the game showed you different options, you responded, and you carried on from there. I have a video which I'll show at the end, which is a text game-based adventure. Another game was Hunt the Wumpus, well, which is also a text game adventure, I guess. But there's also examples like Pac-Man, which I also would be showing later on. So programming style, BASIC, unlike Java or C++, usually has numbers attached to them, going by 10, 20, 30, etc. So this was done to make it easier to add lines into coding, delete lines, or modify things without you having to erase everything and rewrite it. And this unique numbers system made it easy to reorder the code. So BASIC was used a lot since it was simple to understand for beginners. If you wanted to print something, you would just write print. If you wanted to tell the computer something and have it listen to you, you would just write input. And if you wanted to do anything else, you could use if then else, which is how we do for loops or if then statements. So like there wasn't really much of a learning curve since it is basic English commands and you can deduce what they do by seeing the keyword. So Basic has a lot of small subroutines, so the code is broken down into really simple structures instead of just having a lot of writing on the screen within one program, you can divide it into different programs, which emphasize the readability and the simplicity in basic programming, which was really accessible to beginners. But then this also was a drawback for BASIC since you couldn't do any advanced features that other languages showed. So that's why BASIC is extremely less common today, since now we have languages like Python or Java or C++, which can offer much more advanced features, are better performing, and have more development and more teams behind it, unlike BASIC that's not supported. Basic Basic due to being too simple is a big drawback for large companies since that's why Basic is not used anymore. So I struggle to keep up with new languages and new programming languages that keep coming out. But despite it not being used today, BASIC said BASIC was a legacy. BASIC was a stepping stool for a lot of new languages that take concepts and principles from BASIC to shape their languages. And also it was an inspiration for a lot of new developers since the language was so basic and so simple to use. So in conclusion, BASIC played a really big role within history of computing, serving as a fundamental language for millions of programmers and hobbyists to get into computer science and programming. Apart from BASIC just being taught into schools, it was also used in game development and business applications, like I've said before, which laid the groundwork for a lot of people to be creative and innovative within the field of computing. So while BASIC is less commonly used today as other languages, it still has a legacy and is still something that you might want to look into to understand like really basic and fundamentals within new programming languages. So as we explore the origins and the usage of basics, we knew when it started getting development. We see the BASIC paved the way for a lot of programming that we enjoy today. So here I'm gonna show a few codes that I found and one that I wrote. This is basically a story, like the base text-based adventures. Basically, when I run this, it's just gonna ask me to fill in these inputs here, which I'm gonna do really quickly. So what this program basically does, like it shows here, it's a really wacky story. Also, unlike our comments that we put into new programming languages, there was RME, which basically the computer wouldn't read that. That's for you to know what it's about. So as I added the input here, it shows a really wacky story like the name suggests that you can read here. Now, talking about subroutines, that is something that is very nice the BASIC offers. Here we have a code that when we run generates random squares. And this is done by just calling the subroutine random squares, which handles it here, ensuring that each iteration of this is random. This is the code I wrote myself to show the simplicity of it, is just running Charlie Brown and drawing him. This CLG here clears all graphics from the screen to ensure that any graphic that was left behind by other students or other people, if you didn't have access to a private computer, would be cleared and you would have your input shown. And this is a game that I found within the files of BASIC. It's a really basic Pac-Man, a really simplified version, which shows how easy it was to code within BASIC to make games and everything. Well, this was my presentation on BASIC. I'm gonna stop the game here and I'm gonna let this video run for the 2 minutes. If you want to watch it, you can, but this is just how a professional game was developed, which is Hunt the Wumpus, and you can watch it now.